connecting now. And
this meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so welcome everybody to our webinar today with Susanne North. We're lucky to have Susan come and speak with us. She's a family educator and certified family coach based in Sydney. And she worked as a family educator for Sydney Catholic schools for over 10 years. And she brings a lot of experience in the family wellness and family well-being, and has a positive psychology framework that she uses. And my name is Carolyn Lancaster. I'm the new Youth and Families Officer at Randwick Council, and you're welcome to contact me at any time after this recording with any ideas and suggestions for upcoming webinars you'd like to see or any issues you're having, and hopefully I can help you out with that. But Susan has a lot of information to present to us today, so I'm going to turn over the presentation to Susan. Thank you so much for joining us, Susan, and thank you to all the participants and your patience with us as we had to reschedule. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you, Caroline, for the beautiful introduction, and welcome everyone. A really heartfelt welcome, and thank you so much for showing up today and spending the next 90 minutes with us here together. And thank you to Randwick Council for hosting this event. Just a few housekeeping items. We decided to leave the questions until the end. You feel free to put them in the chat room, and then you might even have some questions further down the track whilst you're reflecting on the topic in the coming days. So feel free to email me or call me, and we can have a chat. No problems at all. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share the screen for my presentation, and then we get officially started. Okay, so Caroline, can you see everything?
Yes, we can. That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so today we're going to unpack a little bit on how can we nurture well-being in children? How can we make our children more resilient? How can we reduce anxiety? And just a little bit about myself. Caroline mentioned I'm a family coach, family educator. I'm also a mindfulness and meditation facilitator for children in schools, preschools, and also for adults. And I am certified in lots of different parenting programs. And I've made this presentation today very visual. So please please feel free to take some photographs. Maybe have a little journal ready and a pencil to jot down some notes. There's a lot of information that I'm going to share with you. We are going to have a few brain breaks in between, and maybe just reflect on your intentions. What are your hopes that you're bringing here today into the Zoom room for yourself and for your families as well? And my content and the insights of today's presentations are taken from various evidence-based parenting programs, from research from developmental psychology, and also from neuroscience, and of course from my own experience as a family coach, and also with my own children. I've got 3 young adult children. And I should maybe just add that I was born and raised and educated in Germany. So I'm also going to bring in some of the values of the way childhood is being handled in Germany into this presentation as well. And the way I'm going to structure today is to break it up into different sections. So first of all, we are going to look a little bit at the current context in which our children are being brought up. We're going to look at some of our children's basic psychological needs. We look at what is well-being, we look at what is anxiety, And then we go into emotion coaching, emotional literacy, and how we then can nurture well-being. What kind of environment can we provide for our children so that our children can thrive and become resilient? And I'm going to share a few interventions and tools with you towards the end. And in between, we have a few practical brain breaks, which you can apply then at home and with your families as well. So let's get started. Just to give you the stats at the moment in Australia, and this is the numbers from last year, 1 in 7 primary school age children displayed some form of anxiety. And in high school, it's 1 to 3. So that's a lot. And the numbers are sadly rising because of the lockdown, the pandemic, and everything that's happening. Now, 30 to 40% can be hereditary. So it's good to know, having a look at your family tree and your family members, who is actually who has issues in your family with anxiety, just so you are aware of when you raise your children, because they're all different, and so that you can be prepared. But most of it is actually learned from parents. Our children, they are so tuned into us that they can actually sense when we are feeling anxious, and they feed of our own anxieties. So we're going to look at this a little bit. What can we actually do ourselves as parents? The current context is that our children, unlike our grandparents or even our parents, are being raised in a really fast world. It's fast-paced living. We offer too many choices to our children. There's a big focus on consumerism. There's a constant change. There's the uncertainty. There's a technology explosion. So children are really growing up in an adult world. And there's also a lot of pressure put on our children by society, sometimes by us, by schools. We put a lot of pressure and attention and focus on marks, on the HR, on testing. And there's a lot of competition from early on. As soon as our children are being born, there's competition. And there's just not enough time for play and relaxation time. And these are all things that are really important for a healthy development. So childhood is precious. Children only have one shot at it. And the first 5 years are really the most formative years, where so many important foundations are being laid that assist with good mental health. And it really is not about toys or the activities. It's really about the experiences and the quality of the emotional connection we have with our children, the relationships and the day-to-day living and playing that really contributes to their healthy development. The childhood should be a time where our children find out who they are, what motivates them, what really drives them, what interests them, and develop a sense of self-awareness. And yet our society speeds up childhood and makes children grow up too fast at the detriment of their mental health. So often we want to squeeze in 18 years of development into 5 years. So children really live in a pressure cooker. And if our children learn to rush from a young age, it actually affects their brain development. They become hypervigilant, often quite anxious. And they develop an overactive stress response that often can lead up to mental health disorders later on. So all the context, what's happening at the moment, it's just too much for our child's brain to develop, really. And we know that children need to be given time and space to explore the world and grow up at their own pace. So the good news is that we can change this paradigm and just let go of societal pressures to the benefits of our children's well-being. So I'd just like you to sit back and reflect a little bit. How do you actually feel when you are being overscheduled? How do you feel? And remember the last time you were being idle, looking at the clouds, and just be rather than do. Just a moment of self-reflection. So as parents, our aim is to provide a holistic childhood for our children and provide a balanced and less stressful family life, because we know that this will nurture good well-being. That's one of the elements. And really going back to grassroots parenting, which helps to reduce anxiety. And we're going to explore a little bit more later on, what does it actually mean to come back to grassroots parenting? When I asked parents, what is it that you would like to, for your child? The response is, I want my child to be happy. So happiness comes up all the time. And of course, we want our children to be happy. But we need to realize that life presents us with lots of challenges and trials and tribulations, and that failure is our greatest teacher, which really helps us to grow. Yes, it is very, very painful to see our children being upset and feeling disappointed. For example, when they don't get picked for a soccer team, when they don't get invited to that birthday party, and the list goes on. And as parents, we often go out of our way to rescue and protect and save our children. Rightly so, because we want them to feel good about themselves. However, that does not serve our children very well, because we need to really, as parents, empower our children to be able to face challenges, to be able to, live a life where often disruptions are happening. So as parents, we serve our children best in teaching them how to be resilient and teaching them good strategies, how to deal with challenges. And also understanding that they have to be able to live with emotions that are feeling not very nice, disappointment, frustration, anger. So just a little bit on parenting. 80% of parenting is really through role modeling. Our children watch us all the time, how we behave, how we self-regulate, how we communicate, and it's really implicit learning. So we just need to be really aware. They are looking at us all the time. They're listening to us. And we need to realize that we are the adults and understand that children rely on really firm leadership and good boundaries, and that children feel secure when parents are in charge and when there is consistency in your parenting style, and when they learn about action and consequences. And realizing also that children are not your friends, and it's okay to say no, and it's okay to set boundaries. Our children really need that. So we need to be loving, but also kind and firm, remembering that we are the parents and literally the leaders of the pack. And often we repeat what our children did in terms of raising and disciplining us, and maybe just reflecting in the days ahead, how did your parents bring you up, and what did go really well? What did you think it worked? But also looking at what wasn't so good. What could your parents have done better? And maybe changing that, really become quite self-reflective in how you parent your children. So just a little bit about understanding about mental health. What does good and poor mental health look like? So mental health is really defined as someone who is resilient, who is able to deal with challenging emotions, who has good self-regulation skills and awareness of self, and the ability also to build positive emotions and have a sense of self-mastery. So that's what mental health, good mental health looks like. And our children, interestingly enough, have a really good understanding of what good and bad mental health looks like. They know that mental health is a learnable state and that it can be fostered through internal and external factors. Internal factors like their thoughts and emotions affect their mental health, but also external factors like their preschool environment, their classroom environment, their friends, etc. Affects their mental health as well. And Professor Leah Waters from Melbourne University has just released a really fascinating study. She went into preschools and asked children, can you please draw a picture of what is good and bad mental health? And children reported their answers in drawings. Here's a beautiful example of a girl who is going shopping and she's feeling happy. A boy who, because he's feeling angry, he's kicking a tree as a way of expressing his emotion. So quite fascinating. And children understand the different dimensions that play into well-being. And here we have a look at the well-being wheel, which demonstrates that there are lots of different dimensions that affect our well-being. Often we think well-being just is, being fit, doing exercise and looking after our nutrition, but it's actually multifaceted and it's interconnected. And I think if we understand that there's a holistic approach to well-being, then we can provide a really good environment where all the different dimensions are fairly equally balanced. So the idea is that each domain is satisfied equally so that this wheel can keep moving forward rather than getting stuck in the mud. So practically applied is, for example, if I don't have enough sleep, I don't get up in the morning, then I don't exercise, then I don't feel very good about myself. To pick myself up emotionally, I might eat some sugar, some chocolate, then I feel even worse. That affects the way I work and my productivity, and it might even affect my social relationships. So if we understand the interconnectedness, then we can provide a context where all these dimensions are, as I said, quite balanced. And it really is our responsibility to cultivate this sense of well-being and provide an environment that our children can thrive and flourish. I'm inviting you to just do some self-reflection as well, because as parents, it's really helpful to have the ability to engage in some self-reflection and practice mindfulness, practice meditation, and understanding your own needs and your own values, but also to think about how do you regulate your own emotions? What do you do when you feel anxious? What is your toolkit? And how do you engage in building positive emotions as well? Because it is really important to teach our children about reflecting, about gratitude, about mindfulness, meditation. We know it helps them to develop empathy and kindness and introspection and really sound self-regulation skills. And again, our children learn those skills from us. Remember, 80% of parenting is done through role modeling. And a child who is feeling really well is eager to learn, is confident to go out and into the world and, take healthy risks, and is courageous and brave. And children who understand who they truly are, who understand about their strengths, their motivations, their innate resources, they are usually more resilient and a step ahead. So just, again, a little bit of self-reflection. How do you respond when you feel overwhelmed? What are your challenges in times? What are your strategies in times of challenges and stress and frustration? Do you ever take time to slow down and reflect on life and your values? So just a little bit of self-reflection in terms of how we want to parent and what we can change in our own lives so that we can actually better support our children. And I think I mentioned this earlier, that children like to know that you are in charge. Again, being kind but firm, setting boundaries, and protecting your children, comforting them, delighting them, and just organize their feelings. And we're going to delve a little bit deeper in a minute. So I thought it would be really good to define anxiety today as well, because we know there's a lot of anxiety happening at the moment, and luckily we are starting to talk more about anxiety and that it's okay to feel anxious. And the earlier our children understand what anxiety is, the better, because then we can help them and we can support them and teach them really good strategies to deal with anxiety. And just in a very simple, definition, anxiety is basically the body's physical response to a threat or a perceived threat. And a perceived threat could be a worry, a thought, a situation. And anxiety manifests itself in the body. It causes, for example, a pounding heart or rapid breathing or butterflies or sweaty hands, or even a burst of energy. And as well as some responses like excessive fears or worries or obsessive thinking, rumination. Everyone experiences anxiety from time to time. It's really normal. It's an evolutionary mechanism that helps us to avoid danger by giving us energy and alertness to escape. For some people, anxious feelings don't go away, and they can see situations worse than they really are. And then their anxiety can affect their ability to concentrate, to sleep, or even carry out ordinary tasks. And some people really have anxiety disorders, which can be treated though. So I think it's important to talk to children about anxiety because it normalizes the experience, and then they don't get scared when they start maybe having, a pounding heart, or when they, when they can't sleep, or, when they have butterflies in their tummy before a test, or even in the morning when you drop them at preschool and have separation anxiety, which is very normal, by the way. So talking to them about it normalizes the experience. They don't get scared, and then they know there's nothing wrong with me. This is quite normal. This is a feeling and I can do something about it. It's normal. Anxiety is not killing us. There are ways we can deal with anxiety. They change, their feeling can change and is changing, and that we can do something to change the relationship to anxiety. We can become the boss and control it rather than anxiety controlling us. So when our children understand that, they feel more in control of their life and also their moods and feelings. And it's also really important to teach our children to be comfortable with challenging feelings. Again, I can't always be happy. Life is challenging. So we need to teach our children it's okay to feel challenging emotions. A really useful tool to use, and we do that at school and with children, is to have the old gingerbread man and really help them to understand, what kind of things make you feel anxious and whereabouts in your body do you actually feel it. Because again, it normalizes the experience. They don't get scared when their heart beats really fast and they don't think they are going to die. They understand this is part of feeling anxious and there's something I can do about it. It's really useful also to speak to children about the brain. And you can do this from the age of 2.5 years upwards. Children love about learning the brain. They learn about so many different species of dinosaurs in preschools and are really capable of understanding the terminology, so they can really learn about the brain. The earlier we teach them about how the brain works and how our brain actually affects the way we behave, the way we feel, the better. And children know that their brain is malleable, that it constantly changes, and that we can actually do something about it. And when children understand that their brain controls their actions and that there are things in place they can do to grow their brain and stretch it, and that they actually can regulate their emotions, they're better. It gives them a sense of control, which is really important. So a very simple way of explaining the brain to a child, a young child, is this is the brain, and we've got an upstairs brain, we've got a downstairs brain. The upstairs brain is the prefrontal cortex, and that helps us to make good choices. And it also helps us to calm down the downstairs brain, which is this area, which is the most primitive brain. And that's the limbic system, which houses the amygdala. And the amygdala is our smoke alarm. I usually refer to the amygdala as the smoke alarm that releases all our emotions, strong emotions like love, strong emotions like anxiety or anger and frustration. And then we've got also the hippocampus, where all our memories and experiences are being stored. So it's just 3 basic functions that's all our children need to understand, and that we can do something, that we can control our brain with practice. And I'd like to share this really useful model with you. So I hope you can see my hand, and maybe if you sit down, just do it with me. This is the brain model developed by Dr. Dan Siegel, who's written a fantastic book called The Whole Brain Child. I highly recommend it to you. It's not very big, and it's super useful to have because it gives you fantastic strategies when your children are having tantrums, when they have anxiety, and highly recommend this book. But anyhow, Dr. Dan Siegel has developed the brain model, and he uses that with children as young as in preschools and schools. So basically, let's open our fingers and hands and tuck your thumb inside, and then close your fingers, make your fingers hug your thumb. So that's the brain model. And we know our brain has a left and a right side, but our brain also has an upstairs and downstairs brain. The upstairs brain is the prefrontal cortex. Again, this is where our good, wise decisions are coming from, but also where the area of the brain that we can use to help feelings express themselves in a more calm manner. If we raise our fingers, we find our thumb, which is the amygdala, the smoke alarm, the area that produces lots of emotions, again, love, compassion, empathy, but also anxiety and fear and anger. And that's really normal. When we now close our fingers over our thumb, this is when our brain is integrated and when our upstairs brain helps us to calm down the emotions that come from the downstairs brain. Now, sometimes our downstairs brain is just so overwhelmed and releases lots of challenging emotions into our system, and that's when we flip the lid. That's when we lose it. That's when our toddlers display tantrums. That's when we start yelling as parents or get really frustrated. That's called flipping the lid. But we also know that when our fingers, our upstairs brain hugs our downstairs brain, they communicate together, and our upstairs brain helps to express those really highly charged emotions in a more calming manner. Okay, and we call that self-regulation. This is when we self-regulate. That's when we self-soothe. Now, in a practical context, how can we apply it? An example is a 3-year-old boy who spent all afternoon building a fantastic tower. Here comes his younger sister and destroys it all. I'm sure we've all been there. The child has been taught this brain model in terms of self-regulation skills. So he's feeling that he's about to flip the lid and going to is going to hit his sister and yell at his sister, but he remembers to use the brain model. And by just using the brain model and hugging the thumb with his fingers, it's a reminder to himself to think, okay, I'm feeling really angry, but I'm not going to lash out. I'm calling my mother to ask her to take away my sister. So that's a practical example of regulation, of emotional regulation, which can be taught with this brain model. The more we practice, the more we use this, the better and the quicker our children respond to it and remember to use that, or even us as adults. Very useful to use. What do we do when we feel challenging emotions like anxiety, anger, or frustration? It's called self-soothing techniques. And the easiest one to, I guess, work through an anxiety attack or feeling anxious is to use your body. And with young children, it's as simple as standing up and shaking out your body, shaking out your arms, your fingers, and just move your body around, because it diffuses the intensity of anxiety. We know exercise is really important. And using our breath. We know that when we use our breath, it's a circuit breaker for our nervous system, and it calms down our system. And we're going to practice throughout today a few really good examples of how that looks like. Sometimes it's music, sometimes it's dancing, sometimes it's just going out into the backyard or walking around the block to help us to reduce the anxiety that we might feel. And as a family, it's a fantastic idea to sit together and come up with a plan that you put in a prominent area in your house, maybe in the kitchen, on the fridge. And it's a plan almost like an emergency plan, that when there's anxiety, when there's anger, to go back to it and work out, okay, you're feeling a little bit anxious right now. What would help you right now? Do you think you might want to hold your teddy? Do you need a hug? Would you like to, listen to some music? What is helpful? And just, put together what works for each family member. And remember to use it to help you to calm down. Okay, we're going to have a little bit of a break now, a mindfulness break, a breathing exercise, which I'm calling, just a little pause. So I invite you together with me to do the breathing exercise called 4-6. Again, if we do this together with our children, when our children are feeling a little bit upset about something, we can do this together, because when our children watch us regulating, they co-regulate, but they also learn this important skill, which will serve them very well in the future. So if you sit on the chair, I'll ask you just to connect your feet with the ground, with the earth, and just noticing that sense of connection. And then we're going to inhale through our nose, counting to 4. So let's do it together. We hold our breath, counting to 2, and we're exhaling, if we can, counting to 6. Let's do it again, inhaling to 4, holding to 2, exhaling, counting to 6. You might want to close your eyes. And then once again, inhale to 4, holding to 2, exhaling to 6. And just noticing how you feel after repeating this very simple breathing exercise 3 times. It takes you out of your head, and it really helps to calm the nervous system. And children love doing those exercises, by the way. Another really good one, a little brain break, a little calming exercise, is to engage your senses. And it's a really good one to, if your children are feeling really upset about something, you can stop and say, okay, let's just play this game together. Notice 5 things you can see and say them aloud. So they do that. You might want to do that right now. Notice 5 things, name them in your mind. What can you see? 4 things you can feel. That's a little bit harder, but you might just want to touch your hands, or again, feel your feet being connected to the ground. Maybe touch your heart, your shoulders, your arm. 3 things you can hear. 2 things you can smell. And 1 thing you can taste, maybe the coffee or your breakfast. So these 2 little exercises are mindfulness exercises that help with practice to reduce anxiety and help to calm everyone down. Another one is to, put your feet on the floor or even lie down and just feeling the connection to the ground, pressing your feet into the floor. Just notice how that feels, the sensation you can notice. Then you can wiggle your toes, move your feet around. A good one is to put your palms together and squeeze them, taking a deep breath in and then release, breathing out and just noticing the sensations. Or rub your hands together and pause and see what's happening, inviting your children really to do this with you. And just taking a few more deep breaths. That's another really good example as well. We're going to move into the second section. It's important that we understand our children's universal psychological needs. When we are able as parents to meet those needs, our children become more resilient and more confident, and also get a sense of self-mastery. And all these factors help them to really lay the foundations for good mental health. So from the time our children are born, they are hardwired for emotional connection. And connection is really the foundation and the building block of psychological functioning. And the quality of this connection and this relationship really influences how our children navigate the world. It's so important for their emotional, physical, and spiritual development. And we know that when we are in relationship with each other, that's when we learn, and that's when we grow, and that's when we become resilient. The child who knows that it can depend on you as the caregiver has a secure base to explore the world, is feeling confident in itself. And the key is the quality of the connection. So what do I mean with that? It doesn't mean that we have to spend every second with our child. That's impossible, and we can't do that. But when we are together, the idea is to be fully present and to create opportunities to really strengthen and nurture that parent, that carer-child connection. Too often we rush around and we don't even notice what's going on. We are not really tuned into our children and we are not being present. So when you have those moments, be there, undivided attention, 100%, no disruptions by phones, but you really you are connecting on a deeper level. And it doesn't have to be an add-on. It can be something that you can incorporate in your day. As an example, when you drive in the car, rather than listening to the news, maybe have a really good conversation about something. Or when you come home after school, after preschool, and you prepare the dinner, involve your children in the preparation of the meal. Because children love to be involved, and it's just another opportunity for you to engage in a conversation, or just by simply standing next to each other and sharing this moment of preparing a meal. And it will also actually save a lot of tantrums because children like to be involved. And if you give them that sense of involvement, they feel actually really good, and they probably won't challenge you. They want to be with you. And sometimes it's okay to say no to all those after school activities and just let them go and go into the park with a book, lie down, look into the clouds, read a book together. So it's about for really creating opportunities where you have these connections, where you can deepen them. And as it says here, one of the most powerful mental health interventions is the consistent and reliable parent-child connection. And it's so important to remember. So being with our children, attending to their needs, and really finding a sense of engagement, being engaged with them. And that's often all they need. And yet, our society tells us that we need to provide our children with all these opportunities and experiences when all they need is often just us, just our presence and us being there for them. And as parents, when we have these connections, we provide a really secure base for them, like a launching platform from which the child is happy to launch into the world and explore and feeling confident, going to school and preschool and just being resilient. Yeah, being with them, enjoying them, watching over them and delighting in them. Okay, another really important or three basic psychological needs that we need to understand as parents. It comes from the self-determination theory. It's about empowerment, and we're using the acronym CAR to remember. We talked already about the importance of being in relationship, because as human beings, we are hardwired for connections, and we know that from the pandemic, how difficult it was with lockdown. So we learn in relationship. We need to belong to communities, and not just our families, but also other communities like school, preschools, etc. And an important one is competence, knowing that our children are capable. Really important, and that our children need to learn a sense of self-mastery and age-appropriate independence. It's really, really important, because often, and you might have heard the expression helicopter parents, often we hover over our children and we do things for them rather than encouraging them to do it themselves. When we do that, when we hover and constantly protect our children, we signal to them, you are not capable, I don't trust you that you can do this, okay? And that is at the detriment of their confidence and resilience and self-esteem as well. Our children need to learn how to do tricky things. So sometimes we need to just step back and watch them instead of saving them, instead of jumping in and doing things for them. Too often we see parents writing children's essays or homework tasks or creating their artwork or doing the projects, because as parents, obviously we want our children to succeed and get good marks and be recognized, but it's not teaching them about self-mastery. It's not teaching them about, failing and seeing failure as an opportunity to grow. Really, really important. Because when we jump in all the time, they lose confidence and they also lose their intrinsic motivation, because they know our mom will do it for me. So they need to tackle things on their own. Really important. The same applies to autonomy. Our children want to be autonomous. They want to do things for themselves. Again, they need to practice taking risks. And they need to understand their limits. So if they want to climb on a tree, let them climb on the tree, as long as it's fairly safe, obviously, because that's a way for them to explore, how far can I go? What are my boundaries? And how do I tackle this problem? How do I solve this problem? So they need to master their situations on their own and find solutions to a problem if there is one, because it helps them to get a sense of accomplishment and a sense of achievement. If our children rely too much on our reassurance all the time and anxiety management, they just don't become resilient. They just give up and they lose their confidence. So for example, a child who is doing a puzzle and the puzzle might be a little bit too challenging for them, and you can see they're starting to get a little bit frustrated, rather than jumping in and doing the puzzle for them, you might want to say, I know this is quite tough. This feels really tough, but I also know that you can do it. Let me just give you a little head start. So maybe scaffold for them rather than doing it. So you might just want to lay out the frame, the outside frame of the puzzle, and then say, okay, look, this is how we usually start a puzzle. Now see if you can complete it and finish off the rest. And this is really about giving our children safe moments and understanding about what they can do and what they are capable of doing. So again, teaching children to do things for themselves. And our children love learning alongside us. Again, coming back to the kitchen example, involve them in the dinner preparation. Just give them a pot, a pan, and a whisker, and get them to do things. Involve them in setting the table. Again, children, you signal to your child, you are capable, you're competent, and here's some autonomy for you to do it. And you should see them, they feel empowered, and that's what's important. These are all little factors that we can provide, opportunities we can provide to build this resilience in our children. Another really important one is talking about the negativity bias. So our brains are genetically wired to always look for the negatives, the weakness in our children. How can we fix them? The shortcomings, the catastrophe, what's not going well. And we need to be aware of that because it always plays into our parenting and the way we discipline. It can be helpful, but it's actually not helpful. And really being aware of this negativity bias helps us to parent from a more positive platform. So what does it look like in practice? It basically is encouraging you to find the positives and all the good things that your child is doing, rather than what the child is not doing. And it also helps you to get away from comparing our children all the time with others, and always looking at their shortcomings. So what is going well, and praising your child for all those positive qualities and attempts and processes that the child is doing, and speaking positively. And sadly, we know from neuroscience that if we make one negative remark, we need to find 5 positive ones to cancel that out. So that is an important one to remember. This is a fairly relative new science. It comes from positive psychology, and it's understanding our strengths, our character strengths. These are not our talents. This is not our personality. These are 24 universal traits that everyone is being born with. And as parents, it's so useful to really understand our children's strengths. And obviously they are different. Everyone has a different profile of strengths and a different ranking. So it's sort of good to focus on the top 5 character strengths that you notice in your children. So what does it look like? Character strengths are basically positive qualities. So when you watch your child, when you observe your child being really fully engaged in an activity that brings your child a lot of joy, then you might notice what strength the child is applying in that task. So, is there the quality of perseverance when the child is drawing a beautiful Lego tower? Or you watch your child being really kind to other children on the playground, which means the child is using the quality of kindness and love and probably social intelligence too. So it's about finding their strengths and really praising them for their strengths and reinforcing them all the time when you see your children using them. Again, this helps to really nurture and building a sense of self-esteem and competence and well-being. And Professor Lee Waters has done a lot of research on this and also written a book. And her research has shown that when we parents really focus on our children's strengths and positive qualities, it's a buffer against mental health. They cope better and they learn to deal with life's challenges using their strengths. So really helping to bring out the best in your children, and using that. And also disciplining from a strengths point of view and using strengths-based parenting is a really good tool for us to prevent us from nagging and falling into this negativity parenting trap all the time, where we really want to fix our children's weakness. To give you an example, a child who comes home from school and throws the school bag and school shoes into the hallway, and the bike is sort of, in the driveway, and everything is quite messy. However, they take the lunchbox out and empty the lunchbox and put the lunchbox on the kitchen counter. Now, we would probably reprimand the child for not having tidied up the school bag and the bike and the shoes, and so nag and say, how many times have I told you should have done this? Here we are being encouraged to change this switch and say, okay, let's forget about all the shortcomings, focus on, I see that you have thought about putting the lunchbox out on the kitchen counter. I really appreciate that. That's being very organized. And then you can say, what about, you use your organization skills and tidy up your shoes as well. So it just changes the way we talk to our children. And really understanding what makes our children spark. What is it that fires them up? And maybe even think about yourself, what do you enjoy doing? And what kind of qualities and traits are you using when you are fully engaged? And the science of character strengths is really, if we know we use our strengths, we are feeling joyful, we're feeling fulfilled and content, and we know that what we do has purpose and meaning. So again, what's going well, and how can we really foster that and nurture these strengths in our children? And this applies also how we use praise. If we praise not the outcome, but the process, that again is strengths-based parenting. And it really helps our children to feel valued for what they do and not for what they have achieved. So again, it's a switch, taking away the focus on the achievement. So as parents, we need to praise the attempts, the efforts, the improvements, and their behavior, and really focusing again on what is actually going well and noticing those small things and really reinforcing them, because again, it just signals to them that they feel valued, they are competent, we believe in them, and they become more resilient. So to give you just an example, your child is drawing a beautiful picture, and instead of saying, oh, that's a beautiful picture, it's quite meaningless, really. I mean, it's beautiful, but what is it that we actually like about it? Is it the colors, the paintbrushes they've used? Is it the motive? What is it actually depicting? And really processing praising of what you can see. So just some other examples here. So being very mindful of that, because it takes us away again from the negativity and reinforces all the good things that our children are doing. Here's the book that I was referring to, The Strength Switch by Lee Waters, Parenting from a Strengths Perspective. It's a really useful tool as well to use. It really teaches you a lot about even, how to be in a more strengths-based relationship with your partner or your work colleagues. So really reinforcing to our children that they can do it, they're not alone, and that they are loved for who they are. Okay, it's time for another little brain break because that was quite heavy content. And this, again, these are mindfulness exercises that help children, help us to find our balance, to calm our nervous system, especially in times of anxiety, in times of frustration and anger. And the first one is called Rocket. Young children really love doing this because, again, they have to use their body. And you might think I'm a bit crazy, but that's okay. I invite you to stand up together. Again, put your feet firmly into the ground. Bend your knees, have your arms loosely by your side, and we take a deep breath in, pretending to be a rocket, and we throw our arms in the air and we let go with a big rocket sort of noise, like an explosion of a firework. So in breath and letting go. Once more, take a breath in and letting go. Young children love this and it helps them to calm down. Another one they really like doing is count to 4 and let the lion roar. So you basically take a breath in, counting to 4. You exhale and you roar like a lion. Roar. Again, counting to 4. And letting go with a big mighty roar. Wow. These are just little, really, really useful exercises, and it really helps. Another one is called Jam, and Jam is just a minute, and it's a fantastic one to use for us as parents throughout the day. It's just 1 minute where you stop, you ground yourself with your feet. We might just do this together. You take a few deep breaths in, just becoming present. Again, getting away from your worries, your thoughts, your ruminations, and just staying present with your breath. And then just checking in with your body, what's going on right now, just tuning in. And then just noticing what you feel in this moment. How do you feel right now? Keep breathing in and out. And then tuning into your environment. What can I hear? And a few breaths. And then you proceed. It's a fantastic circuit breaker when you feel triggered, when you feel challenged, when you think you are about to lose it. Give yourself a minute. Sometimes we might have to go to another room and just take a few breaths for a minute. And it just helps us to calm and respond rather than react. Okay, we're moving on to emotional literacy. Really, really important. And this is all really new science. Our parents and grandparents, they have not grown up with this, no understanding about their emotions. So even I didn't grow up with that. So this is good science. This is new science. And this generation, our children are really privy to this now. So we need to understand, we need to teach our children about a wide range of emotions and really equip them with a toolkit to manage unhelpful emotions, and also helping them to reinforce when they feel helpful emotions or positive emotions. And really, I grew up, not really understanding much about how I feel, and, my parents would say, oh, don't worry, you are okay, pick yourself up, don't cry. So emotions were often dismissed. And we know now from neuroscience that when we don't acknowledge and validate our emotions, when we dismiss them, that it really backfires and they come back with a vengeance. And often if we don't address our emotions, such as grief, for example, or sadness and anxiety, they will overwhelm us, they come back, and it can really lead into, anxiety disorders or mental health problems. So emotional literacy is really helping to enhance our kids' well-being. And our children, it's really important for us, and it's important for our children to learn about all those different emotions and find names for them. There are about 34,000 different emotions, and Psychologists often use this emotion wheel that I've just shared with you. And the most commonly used emotions we express is I feel angry, I feel happy, I feel sad. Yet the emotion of anger is the primary emotion, and there's often a secondary underlying emotion that we might think it's anger, but it's actually something more deeper. So it could be I'm feeling not valued, or I feel, I feel betrayed, or I feel, I don't feel, what's the word? I'm not feeling included. So it's actually not angry, it's actually something else. And the broader our children's vocabulary is, the better they understand their emotions, the easier they can find self-soothing skills and strategies to help them to deal with these emotions. And I should say it's important to understand that emotions aren't good or bad. Emotions can be uncomfortable and unpleasant, and they can be pleasant. And again, it's important that our children learn to live and feel unpleasant emotions. As parents, before I move on, this is just a really simplified chart that you can use with young children. You can download this, I can send them to you. And it just helps our children to name the different emotions and understand what they look like. And then they learn more about themselves, but also about the emotions of other people. So they become actually more compassionate, empathetic as well. Another good task is to do with young children, go through magazines, newspapers, and put a collage together of images of people and using their different facial expressions and helping your children to teach naming these different emotions. It's a fun activity to do. So what does that mean in a practical sense? As parents, our task is to help our children organizing their emotions. They are too young. They don't know when the amygdala is releasing all these emotions. We need to be there and guide them through this storm and help them. And again, help them to regulate. And our children need to feel safe sharing those feelings. And they need to learn how to self-soothe. So what does it look like? Yes, we can hold them. We can signal to them, you are not alone, you will be okay, and we've got this together, and I will help you. So let's deconstruct that. When your child is feeling something, you might say your child is feeling anxiety, and you might just want to say, whereabouts in your body do you feel it? Oh, I've got butterflies. Yes, I think you're feeling anxious. Identifying that feeling and put the feelings into words, maybe using the different emotion wheel, and then help them to name them. I feel anxious. And we know from neuroscience, when we name a feeling, it actually diffuses the energy if we say it really loudly. And validate it. You might not understand how they feel, but we should not dismiss it. We need to validate it and say, yes, this feels really yucky right now, doesn't it? I understand how it feels to, feel anxious or frustrated, and really be the role model and signaling to them, there's nothing you can't handle. We've got this together here. I'm here with you. We're going through this storm together, and really listening to them, and then help them to find a soothing technique, something calming, using your breath, using one of those exercises, listening to some music, asking, what is it that you need right now? A hug? Shall we go out for a walk? Do you want to, touch your pet or listen to some music? And really helping them through this process, being with them, sailing that boat through the storm. Really important. So it's a very, very different approach to what I grew up with, what our parents experienced, and our grandparents. Sometimes our children are so overwhelmed that it takes them a little while to calm down. And these moments are teaching moments. But sometimes it's good to wait a little while until your child has totally calmed down, and then maybe sit down in a really, in a quiet, peaceful moment when everyone is calm and say, do you remember when you felt really anxious? Do you remember when I dropped you this morning at the school gate and you were so anxious about me leaving? And then just talking through this. I know it's hard if I leave you in the morning. I know you want to be with me, but I have to go to work. I understand how that feels, feeling that sense of separation. What do you think we can do tomorrow morning? What do you think would help you? Maybe you take your teddy bear, or maybe you take a photograph of me, and sort of problem solving together, but really acknowledging how they feel. And just a little bit of self-reflection, just for us as parents. How comfortable are you sitting with uncomfortable feelings? Just asking yourself this question. What is it that helps you when you feel sad, when you feel a little bit blue, or feel, anxious, not being affirmed? What can you do? Because if we understand as a parent what strategies to use, then we can really teach our children and have the confidence to support our children when they, experience emotional storms. And sometimes it might be really tough for us. And that's the time to seek out some help. Ask your friends, speak to someone, find a therapist, bring people up like me, parent coaches who can really help you, supporting you in that. So just a bit of understanding about self. How resilient are you? And what do you do for your own well-being? And we refer to this as mindful parenting. Sometimes we just need to step away and stop and just take a few breaths and observe and see what's going on before we then tend to our children. And that's good to do, to remove yourself every so often before you feel triggered, before you say something that you don't want to say, or before you just react rather than respond. Okay, we're going to have another little mindfulness break before we move into our last section. And this is a really, really popular one that we use in schools and preschools. It's called the flower and the candle. And it's such a simple one to use. You just put your hands up, your 2 index fingers, and you pretend that one finger is a beautiful flower and the other one is a candle. And so we're going to smell this beautiful imaginary flower, taking a deep breath in, and we're trying to blow out the candle on the other side. But it's a magic candle and it keeps coming up. Again, taking a breath in, smelling this beautiful flower, trying to blow out the candle. And you do it as many times as you like. Again, it's a beautiful one to calm the nervous system, to calm everyone down, and to reduce anxiety or worry or whatever there is. Then we've got the valley. So you put your hands up and you basically use the index finger to trace up and down your fingers. Going up, we take a breath in. Going down, we breathe out, in and out, in and out, in and out, really slowly. And it's a beautiful calming technique for children. Often children find it hard to settle down at nighttime. So if you use the flower and the candle, or the raising your hand and tracing your fingers, it actually helps them to calm down. It helps, signals to their body all is good, and it stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system and calming down your nerves. So fantastic one to use. Rainbow breathing. Get your children to paint a rainbow, and then they trace with their fingers along the rainbow arches. And again, you breathe in and you breathe out, and you use it as another breathing exercise to help calming down. So we're coming to our last section now. So how can we nurture well-being? Understanding that our children have psychological needs that we need to meet. They understand about their brains and what anxiety is looking like. So what can we do at home in our environments to really foster this sense of well-being, and helping to build positive neurotransmitters that make us feel good. And this is coming back to grassroots parenting. Grassroots parenting is something that our grandparents did beautifully. They didn't have all those choices. They didn't grow up in this fast-paced environment. They spent most days after school running around in nature, physically engaged, fresh air, and not worry too much about other pressures. And it's just about really coming back to simple parenting and make it really easy, knowing less is more. So what does it look like? Before I go into that, so have a look at the happy chemicals that we can release every day and how we can do that. And understanding that those 4, I call them happiness chemicals, happiness neurotransmitters that make us feel good. What can we do in our homes and with our children so they have plenty of these experiences? And this leads me to talk about simplicity parenting. And that's a movement which is really empowering our families and giving us as parents the permission to really say less is more. We know less is more. And that we know overwhelming children with too many activities and toys and choices, it doesn't make them smarter, actually quite the opposite. And I know we want to provide the best environment for our children to thrive academically, but that often backfires. We know that too many choices, too many activities make our children hypervigilant and anxious. They're rushing around from school to the sport event, feeding them in a car a snack, then coming home, going off to the next. It actually doesn't serve our children at all. And I don't say that you shouldn't offer activities, but maybe spread them out throughout the year rather than packing everything in one term. Just choose 1 or 2 and stick to them. Our children need to have downtime because they need to have idle time to be able to process the daily events. They need to have time to process their emotions. They need to have time to explore their own needs and interests in a non-structured, non-adult directed environment where there are no outcomes. Really, really important. And so we can limit choices and we can declutter our children's environment. For example, children who have only a few toys, research has shown that these children are more focused, more deeply engaged with the activity, and they're training their attention span. So what does it look like at home? If we have too many toys, pack some away in boxes. Just have a few toys out every week and then alternate those boxes. Much better. What does it look like in the morning when our children get up? Rather than presenting them with 50 different colored t-shirts, keep it short and simple. Would you like to wear the blue one or the red one? So being quite aware of how much we offer our children. Just from our own experience on the weekend, I went out for dinner. The menu was too big and I found it really overwhelming. So my husband had to choose the food that we were going to eat, just to give you a little bit of perspective. And so less is really more. The same applies, we talked about scheduling, saying no to activities, knowing that sending out our children into the backyard is more beneficial to them than overloading them with too many activities. And also, children then become calmer and they're much easier to parent. This applies to media exposure to and adult conversation. Our children are privy to too many conversations that their brains are not ready to understand at the moment. So turn off the news when you have dinner. Wait for adult conversations to be had when you have them until your children are in bed. When you drive the car, instead of listening to the negative news and all those horrible things that are happening, sing a song together, put the Wiggles on. It's more beneficial and it helps our children to become less anxious. So The power of play. Again, this feeds into simplicity parenting. Play can't be measured in statistics and in exams, but it's one of the most powerful teaching tools for our children, especially in early childhood. And there's decades of research that shows that children who have experienced solid play throughout their childhood are academically, socially, and emotionally better off. And play is another way of processing the events of the day and really calming down the nervous system. And we know from research that children who are given lots of time, playtime, are more resilient, motivated, and have better social skills, and are much happier, confident, engaged in risk-taking, and are more intrinsically motivated, because they also learn again about their strengths and their positive qualities. So really understanding that play, although we can't measure it, is one of the most powerful health interventions. And that applies to connecting with nature, right? Even looking at images of nature relaxes the mind. And there's so much research coming out now that really helps us to understand how important it is to be connected to the garden, to the park. The power of sensory experiences. Sand play, playing with water, is really fantastic for children, especially children who are a little bit anxious by nature, children who have had a really busy day, letting them play in sand, sending them out in the garden, watering the plants, anything where they can engage their senses of touch, hearing, smell, taste, and basically all our sensory experiences. It's really important that you provide this sort of environment for them. And that also applies with the sense of hearing. Children love listening to music, they love dancing, they love sort of role playing and doing drama at home. And again, you don't need to go to activities or scheduled activities to provide this. You can actually simply do it at home by just providing some basic opportunities for them to have that richness and really engaging their senses. A word about technology. In America, children spend about 7 hours in front of screens nowadays, and really that's at the detriment of the children's development and also the ability to actually cultivate meaningful relationships, which is so important for our children to be able to be in relationship. So a word of caution: the longer you can hold off on technology and use of iPhones and iPads and all that stuff, the better. Introducing technology into your child's life is like opening a Pandora box. And I'm sure I don't have to say too much about it. So it's really important to realize that it really doesn't have a place in early childhood. Yes, sometimes we have to use it as a babysitter or, because we are on the phone call or whatever, but it's just understanding it's important to have boundaries, and sending them out in the backyard is much better in the long term for their mental health than putting them in front of an iPad or spending too much time on technology. One aspect that's so important to provide children with a sense of safety and security is to have a rhythm in your week, a rhythm on the weekend, and have really good routines in place. Because we know that when children have a rhythm, it helps them to order their emotional life and their physical life as well. A child who wakes up in the morning and knows exactly what to expect throughout the day is more confident, and it doesn't waste any nervous energy in worrying about, oh, what's going next, what's coming next. So you often see in schools, the teachers have a very structured day on the whiteboard, and it really helps children to get a sense of order. And we can do this at home. We can have a whiteboard at home and say, 8 o'clock we get up, 9 o'clock we do this, 10 o'clock, and so on. Children thrive on predictability. It gives them a sense of security and consistency. And again, it helps them to become confident, and when they feel confident, they're happy to go into school, into preschool, and and engage with everything that's happening there. The same applies to rituals. It's really lovely to have family rituals. Rituals could be as simple as lighting a candle at night times when you have dinner, or that hot chocolate in the afternoon. It gives them an island of consistency, something to look forward to. A child who has a really horrible day at school and knows it gets a hot chocolate at the end, it gives that child hope. It brings hope and the ability to get through the day okay. And rituals really teach our children that life is good, there's order and harmony, and it, as I said, it brings them hope, especially in times of uncertainty. It helps when there are things that are not going right in your family or your work environment, but you have rituals in place. It's something to hold on to, and it makes them less anxious. The family meal is the most beautiful ritual. Again, there's a lot of research being done on the power of sitting together as a family as often as you can. No technology, it's just you, and an opportunity to again nurture your parent-child relationship, share your worries, share happiness and your sorrows, and talk about the day. Really, really important to make time for that. Spirituality. Children are actually innately spiritual from the time they are born, and they understand that there's something greater than themselves from a young age. Whether that's a relationship with nature, a higher power, or God, or the universe, or whatever it is, there is something that's sort of guiding them. And to really understand also as a family, what are your values, and how do you keep some sort of sense of sacredness in your family and in your community, and what does it look like, and what makes life worth living. So understanding purpose and meaning as well, it's important to children. Celebrating gratitude. Gratitude has been researched many times, and it's regarded as one of the most powerful health interventions actually now in our lives. So the earlier we start practicing gratitude with our children, the better. Again, it gets us away from the negativity bias, and it helps us to, with intention, looking at all the good things that are going okay. And there's a lot of little blessings throughout the day that feed us and bring us a lot of joy and release those happy hormones into our nervous system. So what does it look like in a practical application at home? Just simply have a gratitude jar on your table where everyone can put little notes inside about things that have gone well, or sitting around the family dinner table at night times and talk about, what happened today? What was the best thing you heard? What was the best thing that happened? What did I do for someone else? Because it helps children to intentionally seek out the goodness. And if they do that, they feel well, and it really helps again to support their mental health. And this gratitude muscle can be practiced and practiced, so it becomes part of their everyday being and the way they go through the world as well. Acts of kindness. We know through the pandemic that if we do things for others, we feel much better. And if we teach our children that, just even simply by calling grandpa or saying hello to the neighbor with a friendly smile, we feel better in ourselves. So if we teach our children that from an early age, that's another little tool to help them to support their well-being. The same applies to savoring. Often we rush from one joyful event to the other without actually staying in the moment and really enjoying what we have in that moment. So what I'm saying is, as a society, we are looking for the next thrill event all the time, rather than staying in the present, enjoying what we have. And if we teach our children to really enjoy these blessed moments, this whatever it is, and staying with them and really allowing us to feel what it does to us when we have a beautiful, joyful moment, It's really important. It's teaching them about self-reflection. It goes without saying that nutrition is important. The healthier our gut, the healthier our brain and our emotional health. And we know that children need to be physically active also to develop their muscles and fine and gross motor skills. And, we know that a healthy bedtime routine with storytelling and reading and nursery rhymes and a blessing guarantees for a good night's sleep. And it also, again, makes a good family ritual. What does it look like at the moment in your home? And children need a lot of sleep. The power of music, really, really interesting what it does to our well-being. We know when we put on a good song like Dancing Queen by ABBA in the kitchen, it picks us up and we feel instantly better. So put music on and make it part of your family in the car or while preparing the dinner, and it lifts the spirits. In storytelling, the power of storytelling. Children love being listened to and read to, and they identify themselves with the characters of the books. And often the books, the characters have to overcome obstacles and challenges and deal with unhelpful emotions. So books are a fantastic tool of really teaching our children how to deal with anxiety, how to deal with frustration. There's a fantastic book called Healing Stories for Challenging Behavior. And there are stories for different age groups, as young as 2 years of age until teenagehood, dealing with different emotions and, stories that are dealing with different challenges. And children love listening to this because they really learn about, how to deal with life. Understanding your child's primary love language. How does your child want to feel loved? Some children need more physical touch than others. Some need words of affirmation. They need to hear more often, I love you, or, I really enjoy being with you because you're funny. Quality time, again, creating opportunities for connection, meaningful connections. Gifts, and that doesn't mean materialistic gifts, but maybe a little note in the lunchbox, I love you, I'm with you, or a little shell from the beach. Acts of service, some children really like it when we do something for them, like rubbing their feet. Active listening, being really present again and listening to our children without any interruption. And mindfulness techniques, again, we can learn to be calm. We can learn to be in control of our anxiety, by really using our breaths, engaging our senses, connecting to nature. And we have practiced a few today. Maybe take a photo. There's lots of different ideas how we can teach our children simple breathing techniques that really helps them before an exam. It helps them before going to preschool when they feel a bit anxious. So lots of different techniques that we can use. There's sleep stories, bedtime stories, meditations for children that you can use as well. And again, coming back to your family calming technique frame or poster that you can put somewhere in your house, and you can refer to it anytime when you are dealing with challenging emotions. Have fun together, enjoy being with each other. And just to finish off, some interventions for little or big warriors. Sometimes we just need to sit down with our children and really challenge their thoughts. Am I making assumptions? What do I actually believe? And how does it make me feel? If someone doesn't get invited to a birthday party, does it mean that I am not liked? Maybe not. Let's have a look at some different thought patterns. Maybe the child could have only invited 5 other children. So really challenging them. And give them a different perspective, and also empower them to find their own solutions to a problem. Really important. And teaching them that there's a lot of stuff they can't control, but sitting down together and talk about what can we control together here. What can I control, right? I can control, I can have an influence on my friends and who I play with, what I say. I can control how I respond when I feel frustrated. I can control my soothing techniques, and I can set my boundaries as well. Popular is the worry box or worry jar, where we have a glass on the kitchen counter. It's open from 4:15 to 4:30, and everyone can put their little worries inside. And then maybe a little bit later, you open it up, you read it together, you work out some problems, you talk about their feelings, you validate your children, and you find some techniques to help them through the little worries they might have. A coping toolbox is really useful, all ages, from little to teenagers, even as for us as parents. You know, what makes us feel good when we had a bad day, when we had some challenging emotions? What is it that we can do to really help us to soothe and reduce our anxieties? And, you know, sometimes you might just sit here and think, oh, I'm not able to hold my children in emotions, or I can't do this because I've got my own struggles. And that's okay. You know, we do. Knowing that if we are able to hold our children's feelings for 30% of the time, they will be okay. They will be resilient. They will be okay. And, you know, sometimes when we feel uncomfortable with our own feelings and situations, again, speak to someone, speak to friends, speak to a therapist, speak to family, parent, coaches, and just work it through. And, you know, have some self-compassion and self-care in your life. Be kind. We're trying our best as parents, and just dial down the inner critic, and, you know, have a laugh. Every day is a new day, a day of new beginnings, where we can start again and support our children better as well. Knowing we're not perfect, that we try our hardest, we're not alone. So just to wrap up, really, and also celebrate what's going well in your parenting. Have a look at the end of the day. If you write a diary, what was really joyful today and what did I enjoy? You know, it makes us feel more competent and confident as parents. And when we feel more confident and less anxious and more secure, we can really support our children. So today, how to nurture well-being in children. We know that when children are given the safety and security and time and space to develop, they will become healthy and resilient and well-adjusted young adults who can confidently venture out on their own and take advantage of what life has to offer. And your relationship with your children will be strong and long-lasting, based on trust and love and beautiful memories. And our homes need to become sanctuaries where our children can restore themselves. Really, really important. We talked about the quality of our connection, about making time and space, being present. We talked about the importance of children being independent, age appropriately independent, being competent. We talked about the importance of emotional literacy and enhancing that. Talked about strengths, the importance of nature, simplicity parenting, some self-regulation skills, mindfulness practice, using our breathing all the time, and just going back to a simplified parenting that really empowers us as families and communities as well. So that's really from me, a lot of content. If you want to learn a little bit more about each of the topics that I try to unpack in a very short time, you can contact me, and I'm happy to come out and talk to you, to your preschool, schools, etc., and communities. Here are my contact details, and that's it from me. So I thank you very much for staying with me throughout this time. If you have any questions, you might put them in the chat, or if you have any questions in the days to come, weeks to come, please feel free to contact me.
Wow, Susan, that was so amazing. I feel like you have covered, I mean, as we mentioned before, everyone got I've raised 4 adult children. The tools you covered were amazing. and the positive framework was fantastic, and I really enjoyed those simple breaks you gave too. What a wealth of resources for everyone here, and I look forward to posting the recording on the Randwick Council website so other people can learn from some of that information. It looks like we've got a chat, someone thanking you, I believe, but we don't have any questions. Yeah, we've got a thank you, Susan, from one of the guests. So thank you so much. And no one has posted anything in the chat, so I guess they've got your contact information so they can get in contact with you if they have any questions. But I really, really appreciate your time today. And that's it. And there is a survey that will come on at the end of the presentation. If you'd like to, please give us your thoughts and feedback so we can improve our delivery of services to you. Thank you again. Is there anything else you want to say, Susan, before we end?
I don't. I just noticed Lucille raised her hand. I don't know if she had a question or whether it was just her.
I don't see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you want to write something in the chat, anyone? Or a question? I don't see any questions.
That's fine. So you can find me just under my name if you didn't have time to write down, just Susanne North. There's a website, and my contact details are on there as well if you want to, explore the content a little bit more. So thank you so much again, Caroline, Randwick Council, for hosting that. And I really do hope that everyone took away a few nuggets and just really, understanding that less is more, and that we just need to really tune into our own parental instincts and understand what's best for our children, and not being pressured by society in the competition and that pressure cooking environment. Really, that's sort of my wish for all our children.
Yeah,
So
beautiful. Thank you again, and thank you for everyone for participating. That was fantastic. Really, really fantastic. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.